Good Monday afternoon to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Beck, and a little later in the show, we will be joined by Tommy Carosielli. We'll talk Little Indians, Little Browns. We begin by talking Browns with Tom Withers of the Associated Press. Browns wrapped up mandatory mini camp last week. Have about 6 weeks until they get ready for the real thing, training camp, late July out in Berea. Odell Beckham Jr. is definitely ready. He released this pump video to get everybody going. Odell Beckham Jr. On social media. Why not us? Let's bring in Tom Withers from the Associated Press. And Tom, when you look at that, he seems like he's ready for the year to get rolling here.
Yeah, I'm not going to put out my hype video anytime soon to compete with Odell. He seems to have the whole social media thing down pretty pat, doesn't he? Yeah, he's ready to go. I think everybody's ready to go. I mean, we've been counting down kind of the minutes and the seconds here till we get to camp. So, watching Odell last week, he looks more than ready. I think we were all a little bit astonished to think that this guy's only been 7 years out of reconstructive knee surgery and was running around like most humans can't. So I think 13's ready to go.
Yeah, 7 months removed, it's kind of amazing. You mentioned camp last week. What are some takeaways that you had from the mandatory mini camp?
Well, let's start with Beckham. When you see him on the practice field, you really begin to understand what he means to an offense and what the Browns were missing last year when they didn't have him on the field. The ability of a player to what they call take the top off of a defense and just stretch it vertically. So just seeing him run around out there was one of my biggest takeaways. And then beyond that, this team has got talent. I mean, lots of talent. When you think about where this Browns team was just a couple of years ago, you'd go out to camp and you'd see maybe one or two players on both sides of the ball that stood out to you and you identified as, a Pro Bowl type player, a star, if you will. And now you look out there, man, and there's like one after another. When you go from Baker Mayfield to Nick Chubb to Odell Beckham Jr. to Jarvis Landry to Austin Hooper to potentially the best offensive line in the NFL. And then you flip it over to the other side of the field and you see Myles Garrett and his new partner in crime and Jadeveon Clowney and all the additions through free agency and Denzel Ward and the guys that we know about. So to me, just the talent level above everything else, Dave, just really jumped out at me.
So we're going to listen to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and this is in response to a voicemail we had last week where somebody was critical of Odell Beckham Jr. and said he wasn't an elite receiver. Let's listen to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, this is Troy Kozlowski, longtime Browns fan, longtime Odell lover. Just heard that little segment of somebody calling in, hating on Odell Beckham. It's like the saying goes, you can't fix stupid. Some people just don't understand what a star Odell Beckham is and what kind of talent he brings to this team. Last season, when we beat the Cowboys, we would have lost to them if it wasn't for Odell that game. I mean, he was the star of that game. And I just wanted to say all the haters that hate on Odell, you will be proven wrong this coming season. Mark my words. Over and out. Dog check. Woof, woof.
Let's bring back in Tom Withers. Tom, what do you make of it? Do you think Odell's poised to have a big year?
I think he is. And I'm not going to defend the defender there because I think he did a pretty good job of presenting the case for number 13. So, it's interesting, Dave. Odell is in a position now coming off of an injury, a little longer in his career. He's had all these haters and doubters for years. He's poised on a team that's got a legitimate chance to not only get to, but to win a Super Bowl. And so I think this is a real opportunity for him to show that not only is he an elite talent, but he can also be a good teammate and a difference maker and all those things that have been knocks against him for a long time. So, I think we've learned enough about him over the last couple of years to understand that maybe he wasn't that player that we had heard about in New York, where obviously the media attention is very different than he's gotten here in Cleveland. As we've talked about before, Dave, being with Jarvis Landry has meant a lot to him. I think he's at a different place in his life. And I think with this offense and the potential that it has, there's only one football, but I think the Browns will make a good attempt to get it to number 13 as often as they can. We saw last year how things changed when Odell left the field, and in terms of it seemed to make Baker a little more comfortable back there, and he didn't feel the pressure to have to get the ball to Beckham all the time. But I think they're all poised to have big years, including number 13.
So we are going to take a look at something from ESPN from Get Up. And now the question was posed to Chris Canty, former NFL player. Will the Browns offense be better, worse, or the same than a year ago?
They're going to be better, Greeny. I mean, you got to think that Baker Mayfield will take another step being in the second year of Kevin Stefanski's system. They're going to get Odell Beckham Jr. back. He's going to be healthy. He's a game breaker. He's electric when he gets the ball in his hands. But, Greeny, the under-the-radar most important part of this team, the offensive line, them coming back, all 5 guys, after having a full season of experience working together, I think this group is just going to take the next step.
So what do you make of it, Tom Withers? Do they take the next step?
I think just what he said. Yeah, there's no reason to think that this team can't continue to evolve offensively. Let's keep in mind, Dave, this is only going to be Kevin Stefanski's second season. And let's think about for a second what a crazy first season he had with no offseason, with having to implement a new offense beyond all of the COVID restrictions and protocols and hurdles and obstacles that were put before him. So I don't see any reason why this offense shouldn't pick up where it was. I think we've all were impressed last year with Stefanski as a play caller. There were times I can remember sitting in the press box thinking, oh, they definitely need to run here, and he would throw, and I would think they need to throw here, and he would run. So he had everybody off balance. And I think, as Canty pointed out, this offensive line cannot be, you can't talk about them enough. They've just been terrific. And I don't think there's any reason to think that chemistry won't continue, that Mayfield now feeling confident and comfortable. We can talk about the potential for a contract extension and what that might be able to do for Baker for this year. But yeah, I think this Browns offense still has another level to get to, and I don't see any reason why they won't get there.
Let's shift our focus just a minute. Bleacher Report came out with the most intriguing project players for each team. So under the radar kind of guy heading into the 2021 season. They list rookie defensive lineman Tommy Togiai as that one for the Browns. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a pretty good pick. Togiai was a guy who, now I'm a Buckeye, so I'm a little bit biased, and I can't help myself on that. But I kept a close eye on him last week out at minicamp, and he shined. Especially, we were close enough to see all of the defensive drills, and Togiai won a number of them, and he seemed to be, really engaging with a lot of his teammates. I think he's a guy, obviously, Dave, with the loss of Sheldon Richardson and the departure of Larry Ogunjobi, that interior line is one of the question marks, I think, as we go into training camp and the early season. Andrew Billings is back after opting out last year from COVID. In Jordan Elliott, you have a young player who, showed some growth last year and still has, some more growing to do. But I think Togiai clearly is a guy who could be in that rotation to get whatever else that Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney don't get. So I think he's a very interesting prospect, a player that played well at Ohio State, doing whatever was asked of him, whether it was rushing the quarterback or stopping the run. And I think he's going to be a really nice fit with the Browns.
Tom Withers from the Associated Press and I get to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. We'll take a look at the best team money can buy. Do the Browns have any on that team? We'll let you know. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Tom Withers from the Associated Press. Tom, NFL.com came out with the best team in the NFL that money can buy. The quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, one of the running backs, Alvin Kamara, wide receivers, Justin Jefferson from the Vikings, DK Metcalf from the Seahawks. Two Browns make the list. Right guard, Wyatt Teller, edge rusher, Myles Garrett.
The one thing about success is that it's then going to cost you some money. So I think that's where the Browns are now heading. And I don't disagree with those picks. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now over the next couple of years as this team has success. How many of these players are going to be able to keep? There was a smart decision they made 2 years ago in getting Myles Garrett signed to that extension, because down the line, that might look like a bargain. And they're going to run into the same situation now with a number of guys, beginning this summer. So, money is part of the game. And, sometimes it's an aspect of it that sometimes gets overlooked by fans, because when you start to assemble a team, especially a team that's got as much talent as this Browns team does, keeping it together and keeping everybody healthy and well paid is a real challenge.
Are you concerned at all with Teller? I mean, Teller's a guy that came literally out of – I mean, you didn't know if he was going to be the starting right guard going into camp last year.
Yeah, no, Dave, I think the only concern for me with Wyatt Teller would be injuries. They really missed him last year when he was out. So, he's probably down the list in terms of the contract extensions that they're going to want to get done. But I have no concerns about the guy as a player. I think he's a terrific player. I think it's just a matter of him staying on the field. And you're right. Talk about somebody that came out of nowhere. We weren't sure what was going to happen with that offensive line. And suddenly Wyatt Teller went from, kind of this afterthought to what some people had rated as the best offensive lineman in the NFL. It's pretty remarkable.
So we've kind of skirted around. There's some extension talk that is likely going on in Berea with the Browns. Who do you think gets a contract extension, and do you think any of them get done before training camp end of July? So you got about a 6-week window. You've got Chubb, you've got Ward, you've got Teller, you've got Mayfield. Do you think any of them get done before training camp?
I do. I think a couple of them at least can get done. And if I had to guess, I would think they're going to get Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield done first. I think it's because they're the two most important ones. I also think in Nick Chubb, the bar has been set by some of these other running back contracts around the league. And I think there's probably a digestible number for both sides right now that they could come to an agreement upon. As far as Mayfield's concerned, I don't think there's any real rush, and we heard that from Baker last week. And in talking to his agents over the past week, Tom and Jack Mills, they haven't had any real substantive talks with the Browns yet. That doesn't mean they haven't had some talks, though. So I think something can get done in pretty short order. I think, again, I don't think there's a real rush to get it done before July 26th, but it wouldn't surprise me at all, Dave, if they get it buttoned down quickly.
All right, we're going to shift our focus just a little. Breacher Report came out with under-the-radar NFL developments entering July. Let's go through what they had for the AFC North. Steelers, Mike Tomlin, Dwayne Haskins developing a rapport. Bengals, Joe Mixon is healthy. Ravens, new receivers bringing fresh energy. And for the Browns, prioritizing speed on the defense. Tom, let's start with the Browns. Was that evident, that newfound speed with what you could see at rookie minicamp?
Yeah, I mean, just alone in the draft picks that they took more svelte, speedy guys, if you will. In Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker, and in Greg Newsome, the cornerback, you definitely got an uptick in speed in that defense, and I think it's clearly, Dave, that's where the NFL is going, right? If you got to have somebody to cover Tyreek Hill, you better find somebody fast. And those guys are few and far between. So, that could be, the way this defense has decided to go this year. I think Andrew Billings, who's on the other side of it, a little bigger guy, maybe would balance out the average weight median, if you will, on that defense. But, yeah, that could be a way that they're going. To me, one of the under-radar things, not necessarily under the radar, but something that's a priority for the Browns this year, I think after we all lived through 2019, is that how is this team going to handle expectations? They are absolutely through the roof, Dave, like maybe unlike anything we've seen since the mid-'80s in terms of what people think this team is capable of doing. They crumbled under that pressure 2 years ago. Now, obviously, you have a brand new coach. You have different players on the roster. You've had players that have been through that now. You have a quarterback who you feel has grown up before your eyes over the last 2 years. So to me, that is the biggest thing that is going to be important, especially over the first part of this year, is how do the Browns deal with everybody talking about them being Super Bowl contenders? Before we move on, since you are a Buckeye guy, what do you make of Mike Tomlin, Dwayne Haskins kind of coming together and forming a little bit of a bond? Do you think Haskins can finally figure it out and be a productive NFL quarterback? We'll see. I was of the mind that, Dave, he probably needed another year of college, and maybe it came out a little bit too early and then was put in kind of and we talk about this in every sport. In every sport, he was put into a bad situation where he had to be rushed into the starting lineup. Expectations were high, back to expectations, because he was a high draft pick. So maybe he can go into Pittsburgh, kind of settle down a little bit. Obviously they're going to be transitioning at some point from Big Ben, and maybe he's the next guy. So, I like him as a player. He throws the ball exceptionally well. I think the biggest rub on Dwayne last year especially was the decision-making. He just made bad throws at bad times, and that just snowballed on him in the wrong direction. So being around somebody who's regarded as one of the best coaches in the NFL and a Hall of Fame player to learn behind might not be a bad thing for Dwayne.
Tom Withers from the Associated Press and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Pro Football Focus is ranking the top 50. 41 to 50 have been named. We'll tell you if any of the Browns are on the list. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese.
Before we can safely come together, we need the facts.
As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it?
Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Tom Withers from the Associated Press. Pro Football Focus has ranked the top 50 players. They have revealed 41 to 50. 41 is John Johnson III, the safety that the Browns signed. To give you an idea of the neighborhood we're talking about, Michael Thomas, wide receiver, 44. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver, 45. Dak Prescott, quarterback, 50. John Johnson III, highly thought of, safety in the top 50.
Yeah, boy, does he ever address a need. And I've been so impressed with him, Dave, just from what I've seen and heard from him in the short time that he's been with the Browns. This guy, and I had been told by a couple of my colleagues out in Los Angeles about what the Browns were getting in John Johnson, and so far he's absolutely lived up to everything that I was told in terms of, he's a vocal guy. He's going to be a leader on that defense. I think he fits right in culturally with what they want to get done. I've been super impressed with him. We all remember he had a huge interception against Mayfield a couple of years ago. And as Baker mentioned last week, he remembers it as well. So I think he's going to be ideal for that secondary. I think it's a player that defensive coordinator Joe Woods is going to put a lot of trust in initially. He's going to be a signal caller back there, which was what his role was with that NFL leading defense in Los Angeles. So I think it's a great addition. And I'm not sure where I'd have him on my 1 through 100, but 41 sounds like a pretty good number.
I think he's going to be wildly popular with Browns fans too, just in listening to him and seeing him, and he just enjoys playing football.
Yeah, he seems like a guy, like I said, is just going to fit right in. And he, he said he was already been, kind of overwhelmed, to your point, by the response he's gotten from fans just from being around town. So I'm with you. I think this is a guy that people are going to latch onto, and we're going to see plenty of John Johnson III jerseys right around town.
So Pro Football Focus also ranked best and worst contracts of every NFL team. Best contract? John Johnson III, the free agent signing by Andrew Berry. Worst, Austin Hooper.
Well, I'm glad it's not my money. Let me put it that way. So, however these contracts were doled out, I'm not going to take any blame for, too many years and too much money. So, listen, Hooper's a guy who, last year when he came in, expectations were really high. And, he had kind of a tough year in my mind. He wasn't really the playmaker that we thought he was going to be. I will say this, though, that catch that he made in the Kansas City game would be legendary in Cleveland had they pulled that game out. So, we saw some chemistry with him and Baker developing as the season went on. He seemed to be a guy that Baker liked to go to, and I think you're going to see more of that. They did work together again this past offseason. So, sometimes those free agent signings, Dave, you look at it at face value and you say, okay, X amount of years, X amount of dollars. And then as time goes on, it starts to look a little bit worse. So you have to hope in Austin Hooper's case, that it goes the other way around, that you start to really, believe in this guy and it starts to pay off as time goes on.
And the thing I would say in defense of Austin Hooper is, again, you didn't have the training camps, you didn't have mini camps, you didn't have preseason games. So there was no real opportunity for him and Baker Mayfield to develop that chemistry. And with the tight end especially, Tom, you almost have to be reading each other's minds. There's a second level of understanding and feel that a tight end and a quarterback need to develop.
Well said. And I think that's where you're going to see a jump as well this year too, Dave, is just guys being on the field together. I mean, when you think about last year and all that these guys had to deal with in terms of the pandemic, I mean, it's one thing for us media guys to complain about doing Zoom calls during the week. And that's tough because we do like to build relationships and get to know players. But even these teammates, I mean, for the most part, most of what these guys did was in Zoom meetings. And so, to your point, I think the chemistry is only going to develop between those two. I think Baker showed in college and early in his career that he likes to use the tight ends. We all know how much Kevin Stefanski likes tight ends. So I think you're just going to see Austin Hooper's role continue to grow with the Browns.
Yeah, and hopefully let's see what happens this year. All right, let's shift focus again a little bit. So Bleacher Report came out with projections of mega contracts. They had 7 of them. Baker Mayfield's was not on there, but the other 2 quarterbacks of that draft class, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, both on there. They had Lamar Jackson fall in 4 years, $168 million. Josh Allen, 4 years, $164 million. So 4 years, $42 million. 4 years, $41 million. It's a pretty good neighborhood to be in. Do you think Baker's deal is in that neighborhood?
I think it's going to have to be. I don't know if it's going to be quite that big. We'll see. I think, in Lamar Jackson, you have a little bit of an outlier there. League MVP, right? And in Allen, you have a player who, and you could make the argument, who's meant more to their franchise, Josh Allen to Buffalo or Baker Mayfield to Cleveland? I think that's a jump ball. So I think what's going to be interesting, Dave, though, is to your point earlier, is how quickly this deal gets done. Do the Browns sit back and wait for the bar to be set by either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? Or do they go ahead and put a number out there that they know is going to be intriguing to Baker and his people, and they just get it done? So there's going to be a little bit of a waiting game, and I'm sure the agent for Lamar Jackson and for Josh Allen are probably looking at the same thing with Baker's situation with the Browns. So it's interesting that you have 3 young quarterbacks, all hitting this, this same point in their career at the same time, all obviously with greater upside and players that are going to be around for a long time. So what's interesting too is that the Mahomes contract just makes everything dwarfs everything, right? And I think it makes fans and media members as well kind of look at these numbers unrealistically in terms of what guys can get. So it's going to be fascinating to see the way it all shakes out.
And the other thing I would say, it's not Andrew Berry's style, at least from what we've seen, isn't to sit back and wait. It's to create a value, think what the value is, and then go try to get it done.
Across the board, Dave. I mean, he's aggressive, right? And he wants to be known as aggressive, and that's in everything from signing free agents to contract to the draft. I mean, I don't think any of us expected him to make the move that he made in the draft this year to move up in the second round to get JOK. So he's shown an aggressiveness, and I think that's going to be at the bargaining table as well as anywhere else on the field.
Tom Withers from the Associated Press and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll look at a number of Browns going into their contract year. So just 1 year remaining. We'll find out who we think they may sign, who they may wait on, and who may be just a 1 year Cleveland Browns. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Tom Withers from the Associated Press. So there are a number of Browns players who are under contract for just this year. Tom, let's do extend, wait, or walk. We'll play a little game. Let's begin with Nick Chubb. I'm giving you a layup in the first one. Nick Chubb, extend, wait, or walk.
Well, first of all, you're giving me a lot of power here. I feel really like this is too much for me. If you don't extend Nick Chubb, I don't know what you're thinking or what you've been watching. That is the biggest layup no-brainer of all time. In many ways, while Baker Mayfield might be the face of this franchise, Dave, Nick Chubb embodies what this franchise is all about right now. Hard worker, no nonsense. Give me the ball. Let me do my thing. Extend him for whatever he needs.
Yeah, and it's a guy, not a lot of words, but a whole lot of actions on the football field. And kind of what Kevin Stefanski has been preaching this offseason.
100%. I mean, he leads by example. And, you know, all you hear about Nick Chubb is that he's in the weight room. In the offseason, he's putting in his time. He's just the guy. And I think his teammates respect him for how hard he works, and look at the numbers that he's put up in 3 years. It's pretty extraordinary to think that this kid is really just coming into his own.
All right, so let's move on. Right guard Wyatt Teller. We mentioned kind of came from nowhere. What do you think? Extend, wait, walk?
I'm waiting on that one, only because, especially with the injury situation, as I mentioned earlier with Wyatt. And listen, I'm not holding that against him because injuries are going to happen. That's just part of football. That's part of sports. But I kind of let things settle down a little bit, only because you've got so many other, big deals sitting in front of you, as you've mentioned before, with Denzel Ward and Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield. I think we can sit a little bit with the offensive guard and figure out what that really looks like.
Yeah, the only thing that would concern you is if he goes out and is, again, like the top guard in the NFL, he could price himself out of what you're able to do.
He could, but you've also shown that, you have an ability to find these kind of guys, and maybe you bring in a young guy that you groom, or maybe that's, maybe next year that's one of your picks is one of the top linemen that's available. So Obviously, you've had different needs. And listen, credit to Wyatt Teller, man. The guy has worked hard to get where he's gotten, and I'm sure he's going to get a handsome payday at some point. I'm just not ready to give it to him right now.
We'll move on. Rodney Harrison, that's a guy that the Browns traded a later round pick for with the Jaguars. Played well when he finally was on the field and then kind of banged up a little bit. Ronnie Harrison, extending weight or walking?
I like Ronnie Harrison a lot, Dave, but I would wait on that one as well. And I think for some of the reasons that we brought up before, which is that you've got some new faces in that secondary. Let's see how they mesh first before we start handing out checks to everybody back there. You know, you've got John Johnson III, as you mentioned before, and Grant Delpit coming back. You know, we really don't exactly know what that back of the secondary is going to look like. So until we do, I would hold off on Ronnie.
So David Njoku, tight end, a guy that you gave the fifth-year option to. That's got to be this one's got to be a real head scratcher.
Yeah, head scratcher and David Njoku are synonymous at sometimes, right? We've heard about him, you know, demanding trades or asking for a trade and then falling in line. And listen, this is a former first-round pick who has shown signs of being the player that you thought you were getting when you drafted him. So again, I'm going to wait there. And I think also you have to wait to your point before about, you know, how's this chemistry with Hooper going to grow? Harrison Bryant is a guy we haven't even talked about yet, who I think has tremendous upside. So with Njoku, I would just kind of, let's just chill and let things fall into place with him.
And the flip side of it is Njoku, you know, he does have the ridiculous athletic skills that could make him an elite tight end. There's some consistency things that you want to see more of.
Correct. I mean, he's had some drops. You know, it's kind of like it's a show me. Show us, David. You know, you've talked about being a good teammate. You've talked about being a big time producer. Show us, and you'll get paid.
So we'll move on. Rashard Higgins, that's a guy that came back on a one-year deal, has some chemistry with Baker Mayfield that's evident anytime he's on the field. What are you thinking with Rashard Higgins?
Yeah, I think he's a year-to-year guy, Dave. And to me, that's who he is. You know, listen, good player, like you said before. You know, made some big plays, made some big catches. Obviously, has some great chemistry with Baker Mayfield. But you know, you also have some young wide receivers on this roster as well that you want to find out more about. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a guy that I think has got tremendous upside. It can kind of maybe take over that role that Higgins has had the last couple of years. You know, in Anthony Schwartz, you have a third-round pick that you have high hopes for. So again, I think in Higgins' case, and unfortunately for Rashard, I think that's who he is. I think he's like a one-year guy. If he's happy here, you bring him back for another year, and I think that's just going to have to kind of be the way it goes for him.
Offensive lineman Chris Hubbard, another one. Extend, walk, or wait, Chris Hubbard.
I'm going to wait on that as well. And I'd be probably more leaning towards walk, only because Chris, and listen, marvelous guy, tremendous leader in that locker room. You know, teammates really think highly of him. Versatile player, can play guard and tackle. Coming off an injury, you know, the knee situation. So I would be, and especially as a guy who's getting a little longer in his career, been around a little bit, I'd probably be leaning more towards walk at this point. But listen, he's going to, you know, he'll play a big role on that team because as we saw last year, somebody's going to get hurt and Chris Hubbard's going to have to come to the rescue again.
Can never have enough offensive linemen without question. Jadeveon Clowney brought in on a one-year deal. What do you think with him?
This is going to be fascinating, Dave, because if he ends up being the Jadeveon Clowney that we think he can be, and if he is not only a complementary piece to Myles Garrett, but makes that entire defense better, then guess what? He's going to get paid. And I don't think you're going to have any choice but to have to want to pay him. You know, again, depending on what they do this year. If they win the Super Bowl, that's one thing. If they come up short and he's had a huge hand in getting you to where you got, then I think you're going to have to bring him back. So I think it's going to be real interesting to see how that develops. And I think it's also going to be real interesting, Dave, to see how they use him. You know, it's one thing to have him bookended with Myles, but, you know, Joe Woods has got quite a weapon there. And if he puts those two guys on the same side of the field, who are you going to block? So To me, Clowney is just that's something that's going to be an ongoing story as the season goes on. What is Jadeveon Clowney bringing to this Browns team? And, it could go beyond 1 year, and it could be, who knows, it could be 6 games too. I think it's really fascinating.
We're going to stay that same position. Takk McKinley. Now, this is a guy, was a first-round pick, late first-round pick. When you look at him, what are you looking at? Extend, wait,
Boy,
walk.
I tell you, when I looked at him last week in camp, Dave, the speed just really stood out to me. This is a guy that gets off the ball quick. You wonder if a change of scenery, as we've always heard about and seen, is going to make a difference for Takk, because Takk is clearly a talented player. You wonder why he hasn't been able to hold on. Why would a team like Atlanta let that guy go? Why couldn't he, figure it out with Las Vegas? I was going to call him Oakland. He couldn't figure it out with the Raiders either. So intriguing player, but I think in terms of his future with the Browns, that would have to be a wait. Let's see what he brings you this year.
Last one we'll do this with. Anthony Walker signed on a 1-year deal. What do you think the Browns do with Anthony Walker?
Well, first of all, I think they love him, because I think he brings to that linebacker room the leadership that you need. I think he's obviously a proven talent. Again, I think there's so many in terms of extensions and in terms of long-term deals that are in front of him right now. That's not to say, though, that if he shows you right away that he should be your guy long-term, that you don't get it done. But I think for the short term, I think, Dave, you got to kind of wait on that one.
Yeah, I think he's a lot like John Johnson III. They would love to find a way to get him locked up, because he brings some of the same qualities to the second level that Johnson brings to the third level.
I agree with you, and I just think there's so many. There's other variables right now. There's all these there's young teammates that they want to see how they're going to develop first before they start making decisions on any of the veterans.
Tom Withers from the Associated Press, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tom.
Dave, my pleasure. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Tom Withers from the Associated Press. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Tommy Carosielli joins us. We'll talk some Indians. We'll also talk some Browns. We'll listen to a former NFL GM's thought about extending Baker Mayfield. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football. Tommy Carosielli will join us in just a minute. Former Jets general manager Mike Tannenbaum on ESPN's Get Up was talking about the extensions that are going to be coming for Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield. Tannenbaum, former GM, thinks all of them will be extended, but this is what he said about Baker Mayfield.
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield will all get contract extensions. Agree or disagree?
I agree. And starting with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, I think those are easy decisions. I'd be a little concerned about risk of injuries, but barring something unforeseen, I think they'll both get extensions very soon. I think Baker Mayfield will. I think that's a catastrophic mistake, and here's why. Kevin Stefanski has won with Case Keenum. He's won with Kirk Cousins. They have 3 more years, Greeny. There is no rush to sign Baker Mayfield to an extension. They have a really good team. Give that money to Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb. Wait a couple of years. Baker Mayfield is slow. He's short. He's had 1 good year. Let's wait and see if we're the Cleveland Browns.
Let's welcome in Tommy Carosielli from the Breakdown Sports as well as the Gap to Gap podcast. And Tommy, I get the cautionary tale. I don't know about that. Your reaction to Mike Tannenbaum?
I'm kind of in the same boat. Thanks for having me on, first of all. But I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't necessarily disagree. I understand the thought of caution and patience with the extension. But I don't think if the Browns were to extend Baker Mayfield tomorrow, they would regret it by any means. I think that Baker's a proven leader that the city can relate to, that the fans can get behind. I don't see the downside of extending him, but I do understand the caution of spreading that money around to guys like Denzel and Chubb. So I get his point, just kind of disagree with the wording of it.
Well, the other thing I would say is it's not going to be Chubb and Ward or Mayfield. The salary cap's going up because of the TV money that's coming in. They'll be able to do all of those guys. As you get a little further down, you'll have to be a little bit more judicious. But to say that, give the money to that, I think it's misrepresenting the situation that the Browns are in, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think, the old saying is trying to understand the NFL salary cap's like trying to nail smoke to a wall. The cap is so fluid and ever moving that there's going to be money to spread around. Like you mentioned, the TV money is going to drive the cap up. There's going to be money to spend at the quarterback and any position. So I have no problem with extending Baker.
Yeah, and the good news is we've got Harvard and Ivy League guys figuring out that salary cap, so we'll let them do their work. Position battles. What position battles coming up in training camp are you looking forward to seeing how they play out?
My eyes immediately go to the secondary on this team. With guys like Sendejo leaving, you have, you brought in a ton of talent. You have Grant Delpit coming back healthy. Who's going to step up? Who's going to win that role? And the way Joe Woods wants to run his defense, he wants to run a ton of dime personnel. So who is going to be step up? Who's going to win those jobs? Where do guys like Delpit, guys like Greedy Williams, who, were on this roster last year, albeit injured, mix in with the new additions to the team like Troy Hill and John Johnson? It's going to be so much fun to watch. It's going to be interesting to see what units they run with, how they choose to deploy that personnel. I'm so excited to watch the secondary.
So the other thing is the offense and the has stayed kind of the same, but the roster has been upgraded. What area of this roster, when you look at it, you're like, that's a lot better than it was a season ago?
The linebacking core is the first one that jumps out to me. Bringing in, you were talking with Tom Withers about Anthony Walker. I love that signing. And then you got Koromoa coming in. It's the linebacking core to me. And you got a guy like Mac Wilson who's developing further into his role. The linebacking core to me is just the absolute linchpin of this defense. This defense will go as the linebackers go.
What do you make of the defensive line as well? That was an area that everybody thought was kind of going to be dominant a season ago. It was okay, wasn't great. What do you make of what they have done on the defensive line?
Well, definitely bringing in a guy like Jadeveon Clowney helps. Even if he doesn't go out and get his numbers, it's another body that guys have to game plan before. And it's something I think that we were expecting in Sheldon Richardson. And he had his moments. He had his flash. And he provides an absolute weapon that defenses need to strategize around. And it's going to free up Myles Garrett even further. And I think it's going to be an incredible year for Myles. I feel like we say this year after year, but I think with the addition of Jadeveon Clowney, this defensive line has the ability to attack in so many ways that it's going to be overwhelming for offenses to game plan against.
So by most accounts, the offensive line, we'll switch sides of the ball, offensive line could be one of the best in the NFL. Can it be even better than it was a season ago? If you think so, why?
I think it'll be hard to overcome that, or not overcome, to reach that level of success they had last year. If they are going to be better, it's going to be because they stay healthy, and you don't have to have a guy named Blake coming into the huddle and introducing himself to Baker. I think anytime you get young guys like Jedrick Wills more time to grow, more time to have experience, it's obviously going to be better. But I think health is going to be the number one factor for this offensive line. If they're going to be better than they were last year, it'll be because they're healthier than they were last year.
Tommy Carosielli from the Breakdown Sports as well as the Gap to Gap podcast. And I can step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll talk Indians. Trying to piece together that starting rotation, if you can call it a rotation. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
First, they said cigarettes were safe. We know how that turned out. Now, they say they didn't market e-cigarettes to teens. Fact, more than 1 in 4 high school students are vaping, and 80% say their first e-cigarette was flavored. Vaping is harmful to developing brains. The reason we think vaping is safe? Marketing. Same lies, different day. Tell Big Vape to quit lying.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We shift our attention to the Indians getting ready to open up a quick 2-game series in Chicago against the Cubs tonight at 8:15. Indians are trying to piece together and get through until they can get Shane Bieber and Zach Plesac healthy. 4/5 of their starting rotation that they started the season with gone on the shelf in the minors. Carl Willis talked about trying to piece things together and get reset when they can.
I just give our guys so much credit for understanding the situation, for being good teammates, trying to pick up each other and pick up one another and do whatever, they can to help the situation. The other part of the equation is like with Mejia and with Hentges, particularly, and Quantrill. Pitching on 3 days rest, there's not an opportunity to get the traditional or normal work you would get in on the mound between appearances. And that's tough. But hey, hopefully, we're going to get to Wednesday, an off day, hopefully kind of reset and pick this thing back up and Zach Plesac scheduled to throw a second bullpen tomorrow. We have to be respectful of all our guys, and avoid injury and not rush guys back. But certainly excited and hopeful that Zach doesn't hit any speed bumps and potentially could to be back to help us, somewhat soon.
Let's bring back in Tommy Carosielli. And Tommy, that's overlooked a little bit. He mentioned 3 days rest. Young pitchers on the mound is where they kind of iron out mechanical things, and those are critical things for guys like Mejia and Hentges, and they haven't been able to do it because they're throwing them back out every 3 days by necessity.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with the word routine. Though that post-start routine is so critical, especially to young guys as they're learning how to be pros. And truthfully, the fact that we can be this deep into the season and the Indians having their best start since 2007, with the amount of injuries, with the amount of adversity they've had to overcome, is really incredible to put it frankly. I mean, you just said it at the top of the segment, 4/5 of the opening day rotation is currently not in that locker room, whether it be in the minors or on the IL. It's incredible the adaptability they've had, the next guy up mentality, and Carl Willis also said it, the respect that they have to have as a coaching staff for not rushing guys back, and it'll be interesting to see once we get a guy like Plesac back in this rotation. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and so tonight, Aaron Savali, the Indians starter, they don't have multiple ones now. He's their starter. He is the rotation. He will get started against Alizé from the Cubs. And, don't forget about the job Aaron Savali's done. I thought he was going to be pretty good. I think he's exceeded everybody's expectations.
Oh, exceeding expectations is putting it lightly. The AL's leader in wins, the AL's leader in innings pitched. He's been gone above and beyond the call of duty, and it's absolutely fantastic to look at and to see how far he's developed in his now third year. We talk in football all the time about that third year bump, third year step that quarterbacks have to take. It's not as magnified in baseball with pitchers, but boy, oh boy, is it pivotal. And Aaron Savali's done an outstanding job here in his third season, and I couldn't be happier with his performance.
So before I let you go, it came out this afternoon, Franmil Reyes will begin rehab assignment in Columbus. So he's going to be back ahead of schedule. How important is Reyes to this offense, which, they were struggling to begin with? How important is Reyes to the offense and the Indians?
I said at the beginning of the year on Gap to Gap that Franmil Reyes is going to be the tide of the Indians offense. How is he hitting? And I think that his power numbers are going to be indicative of the Indians offense. Now, they've been able to pick up some slack in his absence, but boy, oh boy, getting that power bat back in the lineup, a guy who, if he plays 162, is capable of 40 bombs. He's a great personality in that locker room. So it goes beyond just the 1-9 lineup. His leadership, his presence is going to be huge for this Indians team moving forward.
Tommy Carosielli, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. You can read them, the Breakdown Sports, and you can listen to them, Gap to Gap podcast. Tommy, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Dave, thanks for having me.
All right, Tommy Carosielli. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again tomorrow afternoon, 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Browns beat reporter Dan Lobby, Peter Carfagna will be along to talk about the Supreme Court's decision against the NCAA. Kevin Kleps from Crane's Cleveland Business will be on. We'll talk about the Bally Sports app and what could be happening as far as streaming games. That's all at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Jam-packed show. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow.